Body on the ship, landing for repair. Ship troubles, said Asita. Earth crew. Alan turned down the volume on the transmission. Seems so. I tried contacting them, but they didn't respond, which could be caused by damage to their communications. How long? Alan looked at the printout. Just over 2 standard days. T-Ness sighed. We'd better not make contact after today then, in case they pick it up or see us on the hull. Alan twiddled his thumbs. Yeah, he said, and looked at the drooping ears of the girls. He imagined his ears would look the same if he were Sylth, and his chest tightened a little at the thought he couldn't see them for a while, depending on the troubled ship coming. He stood up from the couch. All the more reason to indulge ourselves now. Let's eat and drink and watch movies until we've had our fill. The girl's ears pricked up. You're right, let's have fun, said Tynus and looked at Asitha. I'll help cooking. You set up the rest. Asitha chuckled. All right. Asitha had chosen a horror movie because she was curious to see what kind of alien scared humans. And Alan chuckled silently when Asitha crawled against his side after the morphing alien appeared in its hideous form made from other aliens. She blushed at the end of the movie when she realized she had held onto his arm. Sorry, she said and sat straight. Alan smiled. In our world, that's what men are there for, to provide a safe spot for scared women to hold onto during movies. One ear went sideways. Really? And he chuckled. Well, we hope to be anyway. Tyness giggled. Then next time we watch something like this, I want to sit next to you too. Alain took the remote. I'll start one that's even scarier. No, she said and reached to the remote across Asitha's lap. One is enough for today, he laughed. Just kidding, he said and gave her the remote. It's your choice. She took it and pouted. Bad human, he smirked. Then don't tempt me with getting wedged between 2 lovely women. The girls blushed and Tynus hit his thigh. Human males are really bad, she said and quickly started the next movie. Elan nearly dozed off and woke up with a nod. He looked at the girls and smiled softly at their peacefully sleeping faces. After a stretch to chase a little sleep from his limbs, he unfolded his wall bed, carefully lifted Asitha in his arms, laid her down on his bed, and did the same with Tyness. I wonder if you'd let down your defense like this if we were the same species. He thought as he watched them for a moment. He pulled a sheet over them and settled on the couch to sleep. Asitha woke up from a dream where she and Alain hid from a slimy alien monster and blinked her eyes until she could focus her vision and see she wasn't in her own bed. She pushed herself up and looked around at the dim pod, remembering watching a movie as the last thing, and at Tyness sleeping next to her. Her bladder urged her to get out, and she waggled to the toilet, returning later to see Alain sleeping tight on the couch. She smiled softly at him. Did you put us to bed? She thought, and wished she'd been awake enough to remember that. She returned to bed and snuggled up with the pillow smelling of him. Hey, sleep well? Asked Alain when Tyness sat up and stretched. She smiled sleepily at him, cleaning up the couch. I want this big bed. He chuckled. I'd offer to let you use it, but I'd like to sleep in it as well. A fragment of the dream she had of snuggling with him popped up. Of course, she said and blushed. He moved to the kitchen. And I don't mind you borrowing it on occasion like this, though. It's like waking up on a relaxed morning with friends or family for a day of leisure. He turned on the water heater. Care for a bite to eat? Please, said Tyness and glanced at Asitha, stirring and waking up. It does feel that way, yes. She thought and smiled. Alain couldn't recognize the class of vessel when it arrived, but after a longer look, he suspected he'd been right in his guess. The vessel was made from parts of different alien ships. The lower dish from the main hull came from a human explorer vessel, but the larger dish on top was from another species, as were the 2 engines at the back between the dishes. He couldn't be sure, but the turrets on top of the hull were from yet another civilization. He didn't like the feeling in his gut when it came to a standstill at a straight angle to the Walcurea, and the top of the dish made it look like a moon at the horizon. Soon enough, 2 spacesuits appeared and headed his way. He opened the airlock and watched as the 2 figures in worn and patched suits stepped inside. They took off their helmets, and the first thing that came to his mind was henchmen. The unshaven man with coarse black hair and thick eyebrows grinned at him. Hey there. We need some parts to fix our damaged ship. I'm sure you won't mind that we take the cargo drone as a contribution to pay for them. Hey now, began Alain, but the younger man with dark blonde long hair pulled a modified gun from his front pocket. Sorg said you won't mind, then don't. Alain froze. This is military property. You can't just take it. Sorg laughed. And who'll tell? You're alone here and the Sylph don't care about what happens as long as they're not bothered. If anything, they'll get the blame for your death. Tynes gazed wide-eyed at Asitha as they heard the conversation in their own pod. They're going to kill him, she said, while her heart pounded in fear. Asitha drew marks in the tabletop with her claws. If we didn't have our open channel, we'd never have heard of it, she growled. We have to save him. But what can we do? Alain gritted his teeth, but he saw no way to overpower the two or call for any help that could arrive in time. Even if he'd taken the emergency pistol, he knew he'd be no match for an experienced shooter. The younger one gestured with his gun for Alain to step back. It's going to be a while, so you'd better relax and don't try nothing. You wouldn't want to spend your last day or two in pain, eh? Hang on, Leo, said the first. The captain wants him to guide us to every weapons locker to see if there aren't any accidentally left behind, he said and grinned at Alain. Looks like you're going to earn being alive for now. I've checked. There are no weapons on board, Alain said. The captain says there's a weapon locker at the rear of the ship that has a specially hidden compartment for emergency access to weapons, and we're going to make sure whether it's been emptied or not, since only a few select people know about it. He gestured at Alain's suit. Get going. Asitha grabbed her tablet and opened a secure file. We need to get there first. Tynes saw the blueprints of the Walkyria on the screen. You have this information? It was given to me to be an advantage in case we got the opportunity to use it. And now we have an opportunity to use it to save Alain. Are you leading us around in circles? Said Sorg when Alain turned another corner and led Sorg and Leo through another corridor. Some power units were damaged during the impact. If you want to pass through lethal radiation, be my guest. I'll take the safe detour. Sorg grumbled. Just hurry! Alain halted at a door near the back of the ship. Here. Sorg opened the door and looked inside the mostly empty room, apart from a few empty racks at the walls. This doesn't look like an armory. Alain shrugged. This should be it. I didn't design the ship. I just removed components. Sorg went inside and pulled out a scanner. It sent out a pulse and the screen pointed towards one of the racks. He moved closer and examined the sides. Get in here. There's a compartment behind this rack. Leo pushed Alain inside and Sorg gestured for him to take the other side of the rack. There are release mechanisms at the sides. Pull them loose. Alain took the handle near the bottom of the rack, and after a couple of jerks it moved, and the rack came loose from the coupling to the floor. The one on top was easier to free, and he pushed the rack away from the wall with Sorg. Behind it was another door, and Sorg examined it. No lock? Maybe they thought it wasn't necessary or would get in the way if someone needed these weapons, Leo said. Sorg hummed in doubt but opened the door. The room beyond wasn't big and all that was left was a large steel chest at the back. He pushed himself towards it and fumbled with the latches to open it. What is it? Asked Leo. Sorg held up a food container. This is Sylph food. Leo leaned into the doorway. What do you mean, Sylph? The next moment he was hit hard from behind and tumbled and rolled towards Sorg. He caught a glimpse of a Sylph spacesuit just before the door closed, and he was trapped with Sorg. Thank you, said Alain. You saved me. To quote the last movie we saw, what else are friends for? Chuckled Asitha. Tynes put her hand on his shoulder. I'm really glad we could set this trap just in time. Alain grinned. Good thing they took me along so I could talk to you in my suit without them noticing, he said and knocked on the door. And a good thing there was this interference-free room for electronic repairs near the back. They can't send or receive any signal. What do we do about the rest? Asked Asitha. First we see if what they said is true and see if there's a hidden compartment at the armory. If there happen to be weapons left behind, I don't want them to get into their hands, and we can arm ourselves. Did any of you receive any training in weapons? I had a brief military training and fired a weapon a few times, said Asitha. I never touched one, said Tynus. I wouldn't know what to do with them. All right. I only have knowledge about them, but never fired one, so we'll avoid a firefight as long as we can, he said and went with the girls towards the armory. The armory itself was empty, and after a thorough search, Tynus found a lever behind a narrow grate near the floor at the back wall. She pulled it and a section of the wall snapped forward. Alan pulled it open to reveal a walk-in closet stacked with arms and ammunition. Fucking crap on a stick, they were right! What do we do with these? Asitha asked. For now, let's box them up, apart from one each that we'll keep for ourselves, Alan said. Tynus, I'll give you one with an empty magazine, so you won't have to worry about firing while still looking threatening enough. She was glad to not have to handle a dangerous object while not looking defenseless. Yes. This is the last, said Asitha, and closed the last box with the closet's contents. Alain secured one handle of the box to another with a short chain. Good. I think these are safest stored somewhere on the Amaranth where they won't suspect them. I know a compartment at the impact zone where we can hide them between other debris, said Tynus. All right, lead the way. Think they'll have noticed by now? Asked Tynus while she looked at the bandit ship through binoculars from a window of one of the structures at the front of the Amaranth. If not, they'll suspect something soon, said Alain. Then they'll come searching for those two guys and me. We put the rack back. I doubt they'll ever find them, said Asitha. There's a good chance they'll come to see us since they don't worry about killing. Which means we'll have to take them out any way we can, Alain said. Maybe I can get a peek at their systems. How? Asked Asitha. You can't walk up to that ship and plug in. No, but maybe I can connect remotely. Since that ship is made up from different parts, it's highly likely they had to disable or lower security protocols to connect the different systems. That would create the hole needed to connect to their core infrastructure. I just need a few things from my pod. The three kept to the backside of the pod and out of sight of the ship, and Alain was glad it was still empty. He went around and into the airlock as quick as he could, retrieved his equipment, and returned to the girls quickly again. I have what I need. We can head over to an observation deck where I can target the ship without being seen. The girls followed him through the Walcurea into a compartment with a reinforced glass dome, large enough to sit under and get a view along the side of the warship. The bandit ship could be seen from the side, and Tynus noticed people working near the engine. So they really need repairs, which means they won't leave soon and need at least 1 or 2 men to do repairs while the rest might come after us, said Asitha. Alain opened up a terminal window on his portable workstation and probed for a remote connection. Got it, he said. I was right, they had to disable security to make things work, and never imagined it could become their weakness. He typed several commands and other windows appeared with status views. The ship's name is Lady Wen, registered as a trading vessel at a lot of nations. They've been going around a lot, apparently. Trading is a good cover for robbery, said Asitha. Looks like they're faking flight logs as well. Their arrival here isn't logged, Alain said and checked another stream of data. Someone has stored crew photos. We can see how many of them there are. He ran a viewer on the data and it displayed the collection in sequence. Those two are Sorg and Leo, the ones we trapped, said Alain and pointed them out. 12 men, said Asitha after several photos. The guy with the fat neck seems to be the captain. That would be Don Sachs, according to the ship's manifest. What? Said Tynus, then growled at the photos appearing on the screen. They're worse than beasts, growled Asitha. Alain closed the viewer quickly. This is how low some people can go, he grumbled. 1,000 years in excruciating pain is too good for them. At least now we know we don't need to hold back. Yes, said Tynus between clenched teeth. What do you mean disappeared? Raged Don. We can't make any contact, and Raj and Stowe didn't see any sign of them when they went around scanning the ship, said Dural, his second in command. Then he must have gone to the Amaranth. That should have triggered a reaction from the Sylph. Their sensors would have detected him and set off an alarm. There's a possibility that he made contact and they've turned off their sensors, Don said, and looked out towards the Amaranth from the bridge window. What's the procedure at an alarm? Dural thought for a moment. The Sylph would send out a military vessel. Depending on how close one is, arrival would take at least 2 weeks for their fastest ship. Don turned towards him. Send men to the Amaranth. Kill the Sylph after making sure they had contact or not. Do you think those cats might be involved? Asked Stowe on the way to the Sylph pod after crossing the wreckage. I don't think so, said Raj. They're just way too happy to see us humans getting killed. They'd like nothing more than us killing each other and then take over our territory, said Fitch. Fucking beasts. Raj chuckled once at the memory of how they played with the crew of a small Sylph vessel a while ago before putting them out of their misery. Beasts indeed. Look, said Stowe when he spotted movement at the Sylph pod. Those two are leaving. Raj waved but didn't get a response. They didn't see us, he said when the two suits moved towards the back of the Amaranth. Maybe for the better, so we can surprise them. Stowe sniggered. They'll be surprised for sure. One of the two suits went down into a service hatch while the other stood at the edge and hadn't moved while the three thugs approached it from behind. Fitch gave the suit a push against its shoulder. Huh? He said when the suit bent forward while the feet stayed put. What's this? Sharp pain shot through his upper body while red streaks flashed in front of him. He turned around just in time to see Raj and Stowe roll forward with their suits full of holes in their blood, making red trails, and a human in a Sylph suit holding guns. Darkness enveloped him. Phew. Alain and Asita tried not to think of the images they'd seen when they pulled the trigger, but it was futile. Alain felt his arms tingle all the way to his fingertips. You all right? He asked. Asita took a deep breath to calm herself and told herself this was the right thing to do because they didn't deserve to live another second. Yeah, trembling, but all right. I know how you feel, Alain said and took her arm. Let's move before they send the next guys, he said, and glanced at the stuffed suit Tynes had used before its arm was damaged. 5 down, 7 to go, said Tynes, while she, Asita, and Alain took a breather inside an emergency pod. Assume there are more, said Alain. We can't be certain of how many there are of them from the few photos we saw. Tynes nodded. What's next? What would they do now, said Asita. My bet is they want revenge and will hunt us down. Alain stared at the gun in front of him. I think so too. They can't kill us by destroying the warships. They're too big for that, so they can only come after us directly. Hiding wouldn't be an option either. They won't leave before they see our blood. Tynes shivered and her ears went flat. I hate this. Alain pulled her head gently against his shoulder and stroked it while he racked his mind in search of solutions. We'll have to hunt them instead as a defense. Trap them, although they were probably more wary of that now. Asita checked the oxygen status of their backpacks hooked up to the pod's life support system. We have to be quick about it. We can't last for a long time on these emergency systems when they're mostly depleted. Hit and run, she looked back at him. What? We know these ships best. I don't think we can do more than hit them from a distance, then run for it and head towards a trap and hope they'll fall for it if they come after us. Asita pondered for a moment. Yeah, not much else we can do with just the 3 of us. Alain looked at his arm display. Maybe we'll get lucky. My tablet's running a simple probe and logging of the Lady Wind's systems to find something I can use to manipulate their systems. Asita chuckled. Send them with their ship into the sun. Alain smiled stiffly. Yes, packs are full. Shall we make our first run and hope for the best? Alain nodded. Alain checked his display. I activated the passive mode on all undamaged sensors in the ship to track their movements. We just need to be extra careful in the blind spots to prevent a nasty surprise on our end. All right, can you see them now? Asita asked. I get movement at 2 sections, but I can't say how many there are, he said and pulled up a floor plan. The ship's a bit of a maze where this group is, he said and pointed at the plan. If we can lure them here, we can trap them in this corridor by one of us closing the section door behind them and the others closing this one in front of them. You can override the locks? Tynes asked. With the right code, yes, he said and displayed the sequence of numbers. Remember this. It'll allow you to secure doors and only unlock them with this code. The girls memorized the code and he looked at both of them. Ready? Not really, but we don't have the choice to stay put unless you feel like dying, Asita said. Tynes clenched her fists. I'm scared, but I trust your plan. Alain smiled gently at them and took them by their shoulders. I trust you to pull this off. Asitha and Alain drifted slowly along the corridor wall towards the corner where they should find one or more bandits at the end of the intersecting corridor. They stopped just before it and took a moment to prepare for the attack. Ready? Alain asked. Asitha put up her gun. Ready. Together, they rounded the corner far enough to aim their guns and shoot at the three figures at the other end of the corridor. Bullets sparked along the surfaces near the bandits, missing their targets because Asitha and Alain weren't used to handling guns at a distance. The bandits turned at once and returned fire, and Alain cried out when one bullet went right through the shoulder of his suit. Alain! Shouted Asitha and reached out for him. He pushed himself away from the corner with his feet and covered the hole in front of his shoulder with one glove. I'm okay. My oxygen will last long enough to reach the trap. Asitha covered the hole in the back with her glove while they pushed themselves as fast as they could through the narrow corridors. Sparks flickered on the wall next to them when they went through a bend. They're following, said Asitha. Good, said Alain. T-Ness, get ready. There's probably 3 of them. I am, T-Ness said, and peeked through the small window of the door she hid behind. She watched Asitha and Alain pass and held her breath in anticipation of the bandits. They jumped and pushed themselves aggressively in pursuit, and T-Ness jerked back when they passed her door. She counted to 10 to be sure there were just the 3 following her friends, then opened the door and looked right and left. The short corridor was empty, and she pushed herself to the section door at the junction. Asitha and Alain almost crashed into the opposing wall at the junction at the end of the corridor. They turned to face their pursuers just as they came around the corner. They're fast, Alain said. They must be used to this, Asitha said, and pushed herself to the section door controls. One of the men aimed his gun at her while he flew down the corridor and took a shot at her. Ah! Cried Asitha when it hit the doorpost in front of her. Asitha! Shouted Alain. It missed, said Asitha and punched in the door code as fast as she could with her gloves. The door slid shut and the bandits grabbed the wall to stop. One of them turned around and spotted T-Ness crossing the other end of the corridor. They're behind us, he shouted and fired at once at her. T-Ness yelped when she saw the sparks flying and curled up into a ball to make herself small. She grabbed the door controls and punched the keypad quickly. The panel blinked red twice. Shaz, she growled and punched the code again. The panel blinked red again and she cursed furiously. What's wrong? Said Asitha. T-Ness pointed her trembling finger at the keypad. My hand's trembling, I'm pushing the wrong button. Take a deep breath. T-Ness shrunk again when sparks flew again and she saw the men coming fast at her. She bit her tongue to focus on her task and ignore her fear and typed again. The door shut as slow as a door could in her mind while more sparks flew close by her. One of the bandits' helmets slammed into the small window of the door and it got hammered by the butt of a gun. She jerked further back and expected the window to shatter, but it held. It's closed, she said and noticed how fast her heart raced and how the metallic taste of her blood filled her mouth. Asitha pulled Alain towards her, took his tape from his pocket and covered the holes in his shoulder. How bad are you hurt? Alain groaned lightly. Not too bad. I'll survive, he said. Don't worry about me now. We need to get T-Ness and get out of here. Morons! Find a way out of there, shouted Don when he heard from his trapped men. He turned to the man next to him. Frank, drive them out and kill them. On my way, Frank said and hurried to the shuttle bay of the ship with 2 other men. Don went over to the communications panel and opened the standard broadcast channels. I don't know who you are, but you have nowhere to run, he said while holding back most of his anger. I will find you and your Sylph pals and make you regret not accepting your inevitable fate. Fuck. What is it? Asked Asitha. Alain tapped on his arm display. I'm getting movement from all over the ship at both sides. What does that mean? The sensors are broken or they're blocking them? T-Ness asked. I get no interference on the sensors, which means something is moving in large numbers. Asitha stared at Alain. Hunter drones. Alain looked at her. I'm afraid you're right. They're scanning actively for us now. Can't we hide? Asked T-Ness. Alain shook his head. They're not fast, but they're usually very powerful scanners. They'll find us unless we're out of their range outside the hull. or in a secure room, like where we locked the first two scumbags in. The Amarot has one, said Asitha while she searched the blueprint of the warship. That still leaves going there and them not knowing where we went. Can we move along the hull then? Asked Tynes. Alan nodded. But we'd have to move along the other side from their ship. Then we should go right now, Asita said. Yes, follow me, said Alan and pushed himself away. Alan led the girls to the nearest exit out of the Walkyrea away from the bandits' ship, and they pulled themselves along the hull as quick as they could towards the Amaroth. Asitha looked back when a growing sense of unease welled up in her gut and saw a flickering near the middle of the ship's length. They saw us, she said, and Tynes and Alan looked back to see someone flying towards them on a scooter. Shit, grunted Alan. That thing's too fast. We won't reach the Amaroth in time. But if we go inside, we'll get caught by the hunter drones, said Tynes. And we're not trained enough to hit them if we shoot, grumbled Asitha. We have no way to stop them. Alan stared intensely at the flickering dot of the scooter's thrusters firing. We'll have to take our chances with the drones and try to evade them, said Asitha and turned to move to the nearest entrance hatch. Wait, said Alain and typed quickly on his arm display. Fire some shots to his right when I say so. Asitha hesitated for a moment, then braced herself to the hull with her feet under a rung and aimed her gun at the scooter. All right, I trust you. Tynes clutched her empty gun and looked from the scooter coming fast to Alan typing and back again. Please hurry, whatever you're doing. Alan focused on the scooter. Get ready to shoot. Yes, said Asita and tensed. Alan held his finger above his arm display. He needs to get closer. Don't make it too close, grunted Asitha. It's them indeed. They're not running, said the bandit, and increased his scooter's speed with another burst from the rear thruster. They know they're fucked. Don't kill them yet, Sill, said Frank and turned his scooter around. We're coming to you. Doesn't mean I can't make them shit their suits in 7 color, Sill thought and aimed his scooter at the 3. He's getting close, hissed Tynes and held her breath for anything that might happen in the next few moments. Alan tensed his whole arm while his mind kept calculating the distance and fighting the urge to trigger the trap too soon and fail. Closer, he grunted. Closer? Now, he said and tapped hard on his display. Asitha unleashed a spray of bullets to the left of the scooter. Fuckers, shouted Sill at the sparks to his right and fired the thrusters to evade the bullets. He looked forward again, only to see the edge of a missile hatch rising directly in front of him. Phew! The girls and Alain watched the small explosion against the missile hatch with satisfaction. He exhaled hard. Shit, it worked. Asitha relaxed a little. I don't want to experience that again, she said. Then caught a glimpse of light flickering. Shaz, more coming. Alain looked at the distance to the Amaroth. Hurry, we have to go. They scrambled to the Amaroth across the impact wreckage and went into an open bay door. This way, said Asitha and led them along the sidewall of the bay. They're here, cried Tynes when she looked back at the scooters entering the bay. Which way to the secure room? Asked Alain. Asitha pointed at a doorway in front of them. Through there. She went through first and Alain stopped to help Tynes get through, then hit the emergency button to close the door. Alain, what are you doing? Asked Tynes. You go and hide. I'll lead them away. He groaned and moved along the wall to the other side of the bay. You can't do that, shouted Asitha. They'll kill you for sure. Alain stopped biting back on the pain since he was shot. I'm dead anyway, he groaned. I've been losing blood fast enough to not last much longer. I don't even have that much oxygen left. He looked back with satisfaction at the scooters changing direction towards him. I'm glad to have met you. He muted their mutual channel. It's just me now. He grunted and moved as quick as his nearly depleted energy allowed. Frank maneuvered his scooter in front of Alain just after he entered a smaller cargo bay, and his blood boiled to make the nuisance suffer. You're done for, he grumbled. Alain slumped back and let go of his grip on the wall rungs. I know, he replied via the broadcast channel. Nothing you can change about that. The other scooter stopped next to Frank. The captain wants him alive. Frank let out a single laugh. This one's dying here. The other two will be enough to satisfy our revenge on, he said, and pulled out his gun. But first he'll tell us where Sorg and Leo are. Alain chuckled and coughed. No, he's not, he said. It won't matter to them anyway by now. Frank aimed his gun at Alain. All the more reason to make your final moments as painful as possible. Frank tensed the trigger, but a cargo picker crushed him with the scooters and his fellow thug against the bay wall. Alain smiled when he saw Tynes step unsteadily out of the picker, and his vision turned black. Any sign of them? Grumbled Don. Dural tapped on the communications console. Nothing, he said. I think we'd better consider them lost. Don stomped on the armrest panel of his seat. Fuck. How much longer until you fix the engine? Couple more hours, came the reply a moment later from the engineer. The only thing left that could mess up the controls to the engine is the internal control circuit, and I need to replace that completely. Don stomped his armrest again. Dural noticed movement on one of the screens with a view of their surroundings. Hang on! Someone's coming! He said and zoomed into the two people moving along the Walkyria's hull. It's Frank and Gus. Their suits are a mess. Don rushed over to the screen. Shit, they must have taken a beating, he grumbled. But for them to come back must mean they dealt with those pests. The two staggered into the airlock a short while later, and Don and Dural helped them inside the ship. What happened? Don asked. Did they do this to you? The two turned and removed their gloves while Don and Dural unsealed the helmets and took them off. They froze when they saw Asitha and Tynes glaring at them with raging fire in their eyes, unsheathe their lethal claws and bare their sharp fangs. Tynes stared out of the pod window at the Lady Wind. Asitha moved up next to her and handed her a drink. Nothing else we can do. Tynes nodded slowly while she held the glass with two hands. Of all the remotest places to get sent to, we meet a human, become friends, and then all this happens, she said and took a big gulp to feel the heat burning down her throat. Asitha sighed. Even if you or I wasn't here, something bad would still have happened. Maybe even worse if we hadn't taken them down in the end. I just wish the price we paid wasn't so heavy. Asitha looked back at Alain lying on an emergency bed with a portable health monitor next to him. Humans are pretty sturdy, she said. He'll pull through in the end. Alain woke up feeling so groggy he was nearly glad for the worst headache in his life, keeping him from falling back into a coma. He groaned from the strain of turning his head to see where he was, but all he could make out were blurry splotches of colors. Alain? Asked a shimmering white shape. He opened his mouth, but nothing more than a faint wheeze passed before everything turned dark again. When Alain woke up again, he sensed he was in a slightly better shape than before. He took his time getting used to the headache and the slow activation of his body. After a while, he opened his eyes and most of the blurriness was gone. He turned his head and saw Tynes sitting at the table of their pod. She noticed the movement from Alain and rushed over to him. Alain, how are you doing? He gave her a faint smile. More or less alive, he whispered. She gave him a relieved smile. We raided your medical supplies and found this device in the instructions, she said and gestured at the portable box next to him. He recognized it and noticed the attached pad strapped to his thigh, which would seep medication into his skin. Then all we could do was wait and hope for the best. He looked up at her and barely smiled again. Thank you. She laid her hand on his chest. You were willing to save us. It's us who thank you. Memories of the last moments came back. Well, what about? She looked away in the direction of the Lady Wind. We took the suits from those guys at the bay, she said and shuddered. Using those, we deceived them and entered their ship, then made sure they didn't survive. Alain thought it best not to ask about it until they were ready to tell more themselves. She gave him a quick smile again. All we did since then was stay here in shifts to keep an eye on you. Asitha is working right now. I'm really glad to have met you two, Alain whispered. So are we, Tynes said softly. Alain noticed a part of his body that slowly became more active and needed attention. I'm also feeling hungry. Tynes laughed and grinned at him. I'll warm up something easy to digest.